Okay, so we are officially running now. So the session will be up to 2 hours, not necessarily 2 hours. I'll basically go through my whole list of the 1,000,001 things that you need to account for as an engineer. A large part of being an engineer is just absolutely fucking up your base over and over and over until you get to a point where you just kind of naturally know what sort of stuff to look for, what sort of stuff to account for, how to deal with, the inevitable loss of your base if it's on like a front line or something, how to deal with like partisans attacking your base and rebuilding up afterward, even though it can't be built up in the same way, that sort of stuff. But we'll start from the very square one of it all, which is where where the fuck do I go? What do I bring? How do I even know where to like pick a location? How close should it be to what? That sort of stuff. So no matter what, you're gonna need a CV. You can build a CV at any static base that is like a town hall or a relic base like this one. There's no functional difference between a relic base and a town hall as for like what it can do for you, like building stuff near it, like building cranes and CVs and all that stuff. You will need some certain things to be able to start engineering and do all the sort of stuff that you would expect to reliably. That would be a shovel, a wrench, hammer, binocs if it's unlocked, like binoculars, a pistol, 4 clips if you can get away with it, and a radio. After that, you just need to decide where you want to build. I can't look at the map right now for like OPSEC reasons, outside of like the secure map mode, so I suppose that I'll use that. The reason why I picked the location that we are all at Camp Hollow is because I happen to know off the top of my head that it is a generally flat area. It's a flat area that happens to be close to what has to be a main Logi road because it is a southern road to get to the northeast. It's either this road or the more inconvenient north road. So the likelihood that people will go straight from Callum's Keep straight through all the way to the northeast is very high here. And that serves a few different purposes. You also have to look for choke points. How you want to minimize the amount of effort and resources that you need to spend while maximizing the effectiveness of your defenses wherever you're building them, because cost considerations will definitely apply down the line as far as like the sheer amount of effort that you need to spend in order to maintain what you've built to that point. The last thing that you need to consider after like accessibility for Logi to get to you and through, what choke point considerations there are, if any, and what like activities there's going to be nearby, whether it's located in a backline or a front line. You have to decide what type of base you're going to be creating. So if you're kind of limited by what you can or cannot do based off of the terrain. If you find an area that is pretty flat like this one, then you have enough room to be able to build like what is called a mega base, which is just a fancy way of saying like all the bells and whistles that you can possibly pack into something. You're talking about like storm cannons, intel centers, like a field hospital area if you're feeling like really fancy, dedicated arty pits, an anti-satchel trench line, and so on and so on and so on. You're also going to be limited by the area that you're building in as far as like what types of AI ranges you can work with. Each static base or outpost or whatever has its own AI projection range, in which if you just put down like a garrison, then it's going to be able to be active and able to defend itself in the base. This relic base and the town hall have the identical AI ranges at 150 meters out. 150 meters out is extremely far. That is about 5 keypad squares out. The safe house, which is the little house with a shield on it on the map, has 100 range. So that's about like 4 keypad sections out. bunker bases, once they have the tier 2 or small garrison AI teched, is going to be able to reach out as far as 80 meters, so it's getting pretty short at that point. A forward operating base, which is like your outpost or that little tent thing that you see some places, the encampments, that is also 80 out when it has small garrison teched. If you are building in a particularly wide area, then you are sorry, I opened the wrong map for a sec. I gotta stop recording.
Dun dun dun.
It's okay. So I got it sorted now. I'll just have to cut that part out one way or another. I'll just do like a fancy transition or some crap. If you are in an area where the AI range can't reach far enough, then you can use that outpost, that encampment, to leapfrog the range further outward. So if you're like building here and you're trying to, if you're looking at the map now, if you're trying to get it as close to the border as you can, and you're just like, okay, well, it's telling me that I can build something like, and this thing that I'm building is within 79 meters, but I really need it to stretch further than that, then you can use the encampment in order to extend it out further. The buildable land consideration and like where your defenses are going to end, it is also something to think about. And that can all be workshops. You'll just learn what goes along with that with time and experience. There is only one limitation, and this is something, well, this is one of the many things that the game does not tell you. You have up to 40 things that you can build out from your bunker base before the game just stops allowing you to upgrade it into whatever you're trying to get it set up as. So that is, and I'll actually show you what it looks like. So this, we'll just pretend that there's a bunker base here because there's not enough time to get it up. So that counts as one connection. If we pretend that, move back a sec, guys. Okay, there it is. If we pretend that this is the bunker base core, which is just like the entrance and the 5 pieces that are surrounding it, and this trench is an offshoot, you can build up to 40 things, bunker pieces, trenches, whatever, extending out from the bunker core before the game will get upset with you and stop you from being able to upgrade things properly. You will not get a prompt that this is the problem. It will not pop up a message saying what's wrong. It will make you think that there is a bug when there's an actual reason for it. So, and it can branch out too. So just as an example, this trench here, and I'll put another one here. Think of it kind of like branches as a tree, like whatever the endpoint is from the base of the branch is going to be where it starts counting. So this is one connection out from the bunker entrance. This is 2. This is also 2. This would be 3, and so on and so forth. I think that you can see what I'm kind of going for. As far as what sort of defenses you want at the ends of these connections, there's a few different like meta builds, I suppose you could say, and I'll just put those out here. So there's this guy. This guy is seen less often. This one is going to be called it doesn't have like an easy name. It's like a dive bomber, I've seen it called, where the sides are AT and the section facing the enemy or believed to be facing the enemy is going to be a rifle garrison to provide like roughly like 200 and something coverage, 220 coverage probably, with this back piece being a howitzer garrison that is either facing northwest or northeast or whichever direction you want coverage on. This is considered a really effective, cost effective, that is, way of covering a lot of space while packing a lot of AT into an area, but there are some vulnerabilities to it. So if at night, when like, unless you have like night lights running on your bunker sections, partisans can hide in the shadows and aim like at the very edge of this rifle garrison with like an armor car or something, and just very lightly tap this until the whole section goes down, and they can just get around it somewhat easily. This one is going to be one that you'll be seeing a lot, pretty much everywhere, and that's just because it's durable. It is a thick boy, and it provides pretty good coverage, especially going in one direction. I'll have you move back this. Now the idea with this one is that there is coverage against infantry on both sides of the defense section. There is AT in the middle, providing 100 and 180 degree coverage for the most part. It just goes along like this. So I'll just you can fill in the blank on what that middle piece is. So the two squares facing the front are going to be rifle garrison. The one in the middle is going to be AT facing out the same way. The two squares in the back are going to be howitzer garrisons, and there is a reason why you would want to position them facing inward so that their barrels like weirdly cross. So here you would be facing this one that I'm nearest now, northeast, and the other one you would be facing southeast. Now the reason for that is because howitzer garrisons have like about 200 degrees of coverage, and so the only way that they would be able to deal with it is this really small patch way back south, or way back west. Like they have to be in a very particular area to be able to hit it safely. These you would want to pack in where you know the enemy is going to be coming from. But sometimes you don't have the luxury of building something like this. You sometimes have to work with smaller or more awkward spaces, which is where the Y comes in. This thing that I just built is called W. The Y is extremely similar to the W. It literally is just the same general shape. It's just this, and then with the howitzer garrison where I'm standing. Or if you know 100% certainty that they're only going to be coming from one direction, you could put a diamond piece like this and then have the howitzer facing this way. It's better, in my opinion, to try to have them facing alternating directions, just because, you know, the enemy can't control their splash. So anything to have a chance of hitting them if they're attacking it from a weird angle is really good. So that's your basic Y. These are the ones that you're going to be seeing the most often. The only other one that I can think of recommending off the top of my head is going to be just the 1x3. There's no fancy term for it. It literally is just these three squares side by side. This is extremely cheap, but it also doesn't have any kind of howitzer defense on it at all, which means that it's extremely vulnerable in like the early mid game onward, when like 120s start getting unlocked, like right now. You can put these where if you are building a base that is just like a partisan base, like if you're building somewhere in the very back line and you know that the base is not going to survive long enough to be able to tech all the way to howitzer, you could put these in like each of the 8 cardinal directions of your base and feel pretty secure that they're not going to be able to break through it easily. And if it's getting howitzered, then, you know, like you're already strapped for supplies as is. So it's really just there to help you in the short term. So we've gone over the defenses and like the what would ostensibly be like the three main like defense sections that you would build. As far as how to design the core the core that you're going to be basing this all out of, there's a few different ways to do it, and sometimes you will want to break out of the standard way of doing it, because you have to either work with terrain or because you want to take advantage of some kind of like weird terrain quirk, like for example, or like some kind of like element in the environment that isn't necessarily terrain. Like for example, this relic base here, like having these squares wrap around the back of it. Just as an example, these stone walls shouldn't be here. So what I'm specifically referencing is the base that I built, or that we built, calf, that is at Tomb, where it just has an irregular shape to it, to better defend against like arty and whatnot. But there is a standard type of bunker base that you can build that is pretty applicable. You just have to work within the 6 bunker core piece limit. At its very basic, the only thing that the game cares about that lets you build a bunker base, that lets you supply it or operate or spawn out of it, whatever, is 5 pieces with an additional one that is going to be your entrance facing whatever direction. You just have to make sure that you have enough space between whatever it is that you're building the entrance toward, like a road, and whatever the entrance is going to be. The game is not going to tell you or give you any kind of indication about how far away you can be or how close you can be to a road or like terrain feature like these stone walls before it will just not let you build the entrance at all. So if you go through all of the effort and build up the bunker core and you're like, okay, let's do this shit, I'm ready to go, and then you try to build the entrance and the game says, sorry, terrain obstruction, well, you have to build the entrance facing some other way. There are a couple different techniques that you can use in order to avoid that, and it's going to be a little bit difficult to see just because I'm not actively streaming anywhere, but we're going to go to the road for this. The easiest way to be sure that you are going to be building just far enough away from a road or other terrain feature, and yet close enough to the road to be able to make it easy on Logi to just drive up to it and do what they need to do, is building a trench out in like perpendicular to whatever the terrain feature is. So just putting it down, not digging it out, and then cutting it in like a fourth with like a square piece like this, and that should just be far enough from the road to not get in the way. So I'll do that one more time. You will just put it as close to the road as you can possibly get away with, where like the moment that it turns yellow, and then you'll cut it in like a fourth with the bunker core entrance, or whatever wherever the entrance is supposed to be, however it's supposed to be facing. I will show you what the game considers like a basic like bunker. Back up a little bit, guys. So it is these pieces here. And then 3 behind it here. So you can kind of fill in the blanks like each side by side, and then based off of where I was kind of plotting the trench out before, the base entrance would be right here. Once you have this all dug out, you would bring the CV over, the construction vehicle, and you would just build the bunker base entrance facing out. That is at the very basic, like what the game wants. There is people only extremely rarely build it like this because there's lots of vulnerabilities to it. You can't easily build like howitzer garrisons into like the bunker design. There's like restrictions such as the bunker core counts as what the game considers a combat upgrade, which is just a fancy way of saying that it won't allow garrisons to be built right next to it, even if it's diagonal to it. So for example, like here, even though it's not directly adjacent to the core, its corner is still touching it as a square. You can get around it in a really confusing way by building a corner piece. You can get away with building off of a corner piece, and the game just won't care. So I'm gonna shoot this and get my shovel back out and build this up here. So anything that is offshooting from these corner pieces, the game will be happy with. Confusingly, that also applies to the like square corner pieces that happen to be touching, but with diamond pieces in between. So I'll show you what that looks like. Alright, so this guy here. And this is just general information. It doesn't have to apply only to a core. And put this guy here. And this guy here. Don't let me anytime game. There we go. So before, when I explained that you couldn't, like, even if the square pieces were touching at the corners, it wouldn't allow it. Diamond sections are the way to get around that. These two garrisons will be happy being built for some reason, as long as there is like diamonds on the sides providing interference for it. Going back to the bunker core entrance design, the reason why I explained all that immediately afterward is because you will only rarely, if ever, see the 2x3. You will more likely see this design, which I'm going to make sure that I'm not getting blocked by anything. I'll just put it down here. Which is the howitzer garrison. And this guy here. And this guy here. And I'll do one more where JJ is standing. Okay. And then I'll let you fill in the blanks with the rest of this once I put this last piece down. Same idea. Diamond on this side, diamond on the missing other piece, with howitzers sticking out like this. There's no formal name for this. It's just a design that most people go for. The reason being is that, like I explained with the W section, like the bunker section design, you'll have the howitzers, the howitzer cannon barrels, facing inward toward the center of the core, and that would provide 360-degree coverage. No matter where the enemy is hitting it with artillery, something is going to respond to it. If any part of a defense section is hit with artillery, anything that can attack back will attack back, and that includes artillery. So even if the splash damage from artillery were to hit where I'm standing, and this howitzer piece, which is facing southwest, can't shoot back because it can't like about face and fire, because its whole entirety is getting hit with something, the game will try to see if there's something that it can respond back with, which would be this southwest piece here facing northeast. So it's very secure. It's relatively compact. It has a lot of health, which I'll get into in just a moment. But there is one more design that is smaller, which can work in an area that you don't really have much room to work around. And this one is called the bow tie. So it's just this guy, which is a howitzer piece. And this guy here, as soon as it lets me do it. And howitzer piece here. Right there. And if you happen to have a shovel, dig out that middle piece there, or if you happen to have a shovel, make a square blueprint there. And same thing with this side, these guys would be like howitzer parts. So if you could put one on the other side, T-force. Mirroring the other side, exactly. So real easy to move around, as small as you can possibly get away with, while still having enough pieces for the game to let you build a bunker base. And the benefit of this design, like the other one, is that you can have the bunker entrance facing out either way. So, you know, you might be thinking to yourself, well, if bigger is better, why don't people build like 20-piece sections that are like invulnerable, where they have like just one massive section that is pointing defenses in all directions, you know, and like even encircled, it would be able to defend itself no matter what. It's because of the integrity system that is something that the game does not explain very well at all. Some people who have done research believe that it operates in some ways. Other people that have had a lot of experience with it, direct experience, think that it operates other ways. It basically just means that when you hover your hammer over a structure and you press F and it gives you like the health readout and the integrity readout afterward, you have different ranges, different values that the game gives to it as to how strong its integrity is. Integrity is just it's just like a really vague word for how durable the game is, or how durable this section is against fire. So that goes from high integrity, medium, low, and critical. Critical basically means that you can just look at it and it'll fall apart. Where it has like so little integrity that no matter, you know, if it seems like it would be able to put up with a lot and it's cemented and all that, if it has critical integrity, it doesn't matter if it's cemented or not. It'll take so much damage, or that it just won't be able to survive against much damage at all. The way that you keep integrity high is by keeping defense sections small as compact as you can get away with. And at the same time, each individual piece that you put down is going to have its own value of health that it's contributing to the structure that it's a part of. So I'll just put in, because that fence is there, I can't easily do it. Let's shoot this out. This 1x3 is going to have pretty good medium durability, and it's guaranteed to have high durability when it's all built out and upgraded to tier 2, which is the one that it's all wooden, and tier 3 being that it's all concrete. This is not, the information I'm about to give you is not going to be accurate, but it is an easy way of thinking about stuff like this. You could think of each of these sections, that each of these pieces, these individual pieces, as having 100 health to their name. When you add sections to each other, they are contributing their own individual health to the overall defense section that they're a part of. So each of these guys is 100 health. If the integrity is higher, then it's each individual piece is contributing more of its health to its overall section. So we can assume that this is high integrity. So it's going to, each of these pieces is going to try to give 100% of its health, 100 health, to each other. And the more pieces that you add to each other, it's going to slightly decrease how much the health counts from each piece. So we're talking about like 100 and 100. When they're combined together, the whole structure could be thought to have like 190 health. If the integrity was medium, like it was just like a tier 1 structure that's something shitty, and the integrity was medium, you could think of it as having like 160 health or 170 health. Those aren't the correct values. That's just me giving you an example of how to think about it. And that's why you don't build like 100 million pieces like in a defense section, because for each piece that you add, the overall integrity drops, which means the overall health, the amount of damage that it can take before it goes down, also drops. That's an extremely long-winded way to explain how integrity works. It is not intuitive. It is not explained well by the game at all. But that's as best as I can I can explain it without going nuts or like making your eyes roll into the back of your head and making you pass out. So we've covered defense sections. We've covered where to build, and there's more reasons than just like flat land and choke points and stuff to build in to like for it to matter, like logi access and all that stuff. There is something in the game called activity, which the game also does not explain. And activity increases the technology that the bunker base is developing towards researching things like being able to build rifle garrisons or being able to put down cement or observation bunkers or whatnot. So if we go over to the relic base and you press E on it, you'll see that this one already starts out with absolutely everything teched up to the max because it's in red. Oh no, it's not in red. I'm thinking of something else. Because it's the boxes are completely full, gray with fully gray, and that means that it's teched all the way down. Friendly bases that start at the beginning of the war are teched up to full. If it's in a neutral area starting out, they have to start from scratch. If you cap like an enemy base, the technology also starts from scratch. If you were to build up a new, like if you were to build this up from scratch, it would start with provisional, which would need a certain amount of time to tech up based off of how much activity is going around it, into it. Activity is measured in about a million different ways, all of which the game does not tell you. It tries to keep it as vague as possible, but there are things that are for sure. It's just not detailed anywhere. There's like data for it, but the game doesn't say, okay, you get 10 points of technology or whatever towards, you know, how quickly provisional garrison gets teched. It doesn't say that anywhere. So how do you get this stuff to upgrade as fast as possible to keep your front alive? There's a number of different ways. The first thing that you pretty much always do when you go up to like a frontline base because you want to keep spawning from it and whatnot is clicking the little house icon at the very bottom, assign spawn point under the actions bar. When you do that, you are giving passive tech generation to the base. As long as you are anywhere in the same hex, you will continue giving it that passive tech generation. If you spawn, respawn, put stuff into the base, take stuff out of the base, if you are even in its vicinity, like if there are logi trucks passing by, they also generate a certain amount of passive tech generation, allegedly. It's also believed, with some evidence to it, that if you put 500 or more of any item, does not matter what it is, into a base, that also contributes like some passive amount of tech generation. With the idea being that the game has no context. It doesn't need to know that you're just shoving crap in there in order to get that tech bonus. It just thinks, okay, this base has to be being used because it has 500 things in it. So that's why sometimes you see bases scattered around the map that have like 500 salvage in them, and you're like, why are people doing that? Like, are they dumb? Are they just leaving it for somebody else to like pick up and take somewhere? It's very likely that they're just putting it in there because it's contributing to how quickly something techs. You will sometimes see people in like these defense ports that are marked with X, and they're not moving, they're not doing anything, they're just being there. It's because they're leaving the game on overnight to make sure that passive tech generation that they're contributing by keeping their spawn set to it is going on for hours and hours and hours. So all these things contribute to the tech generation. If you were to put your base near a Logi road like this one, your base has a really high chance of teching faster than normal, just because the game sees that there is crap going on around it a lot and like a really high frequency. So this is like an almost Goldilocks type environment for a base. It's within the 150 meter AI range umbrella that we talked about before, where you can build out your defenses pretty much as far as you want. 150 meters is really, really far to build defenses out to. The other benefit being is that because all of that stuff is falling under the static base's umbrella, it's also applying its benefit of the large garrison. So, which brings us to maintaining your base after you build out all the sections that are facing out towards the enemy, as 360 degrees as you can get it. You have your amenities like arty pits that are relatively close to the relic base or an ammo room, so that people can just run in, grab the ammo that they need for the gun, and run over to it. Like you've set it up so that there's like a fuel tanker next to the bunker base entrance so that people can just grab fuel, or you can grab fuel for engine rooms and so on and so forth. All of that crap takes supplies, and there's two different types of supplies that you'll have to acquaint yourself with, for better or worse, because the dev man made it really hard to properly supply big bases. There are two different types of supplies that the base needs in order to stop all those defenses that you've made from decaying. Are bunker supplies and garrison supplies. You will notice when you go to a factory that the two cost the same. That it's both, I forget exactly off the top of my head how much it is. It's 75, that's what it was. So it's going to be like 300 for like a stack of 4, crates of garrison supplies for 150 supplies each of either kind. So the amount that you get and the amount that you pay for them are the same. And naturally, everyone is like, okay, well, what type do I use? Like, if the garrison supply is supposed to keep absolutely everything alive, like sandbags and wire pallets and storage boxes and all the other normal crap like bunker pieces and trenches, why would I ever use bunker supplies? The reason why you would want bunker supplies is because they allow all of that other excess fat to be trimmed away by decay over time. So let's pretend for a moment that this base is frontline and it's getting, fricked up on the daily, as the cool kids say in the street vernacular. And you have, thank you JJ for the comments. You have sandbags facing out. If people care enough to put sandbags down, you have wire in front of those sandbags to protect the people behind the sandbags. You have tank traps littered all over the place, and the whole front is a mess. And you want all that stuff to be alive as long as possible. You would use garrison supplies for that because the supplies would stop all that crap from decaying away. The difference with the bunker supplies is that if the frontline base that's here, like if our dudes are doing a great job and they push into the next hex, you don't need all those tank traps anymore. You don't want to have to keep paying for those things long term, because you will lose your mind sitting at a factory for hours a day trying to make supplies just to keep the thing alive, unless you want to do it for like aesthetic or cosmetic reasons, which I fully understand. So you would use bunker supplies to let that other crap decay away, but keeping the most important part, which is your defense sections, so that if in the unlikely event that push that we were just talking about gets pushed all the way back, you still have all of your crap being alive, but you're not paying for all that stuff in the meantime. All right, so we went over that stuff. So, when you're blueprinting and you're trying to figure out how to neatly pack in as much as humanly possible, as much as you can get away with while at the same time making sure that people can navigate into the base, that it's not insane for Logi to get to, because making Logi upset is a bad idea no matter what your reasoning is. Unless you're obviously building like a partisan base or something, or if it's like in a choke point that you just cannot get away with otherwise. Um, you you are going to be making mistakes. You're going to either be building like too close to the road, or like a piece ends up where it's like coming, too close to this stone wall for the game to be comfortable with, and so you can't, like, you dig it out thinking that you can get away with it, and you just can't. The game has a system that is meant to control team killers or griefers from getting away with stuff, and that's like the excessive team damage warnings. Even if you are the one that's digging out the stuff, or are the one that built it, the game will get mad at you for destroying enough of your own stuff. The only way to get rid of blueprints like this, like while you're blueprinting the whole thing out, is by shooting it, as of right now. So if I were to destroy everything that we created, I would start getting excessive damage warnings, or excessive team damage warnings in the chat. You can get up to 2 of those warnings before the game is like, okay, this guy is clearly a griefer because it doesn't understand context. And then it weapons restricts you for 20 minutes, which means that you can't even use things like cranes. The game thinks like cranes is a weapon. It will let you like shovel, and that's it's let you shovel, but it won't let you wrench. It's just a huge pain. So you have to basically beg other people to shoot blueprints for you. It's just a part of being an engineer, and you'll encounter that a lot. Definitely as you're learning and making your own bases. And it's okay to mess up. It's okay to get weapons restricted. It's just something that happens. When you do get weapons restricted, and you absolutely will at some point or another, the game seems to have some kind of hidden gauge that fills up the more team damage you're causing. And that team damage seems to decay or lower over time, so that the gauge is like less and less over time, until basically the game is like, okay, he's been a good boy for like 15 hours. Like he probably learned his lesson and won't team damage as much. There's 2 different ways that you can try to get around team damage as best as you can. It's extremely hard when you're alone and plotting stuff out yourself. If you are alone, or just in general, you're going to want to use as low damage per bullet stuff as you can get away with. That's like your fiddlers, that is your pistol. You want to cause as little damage as possible when you're destroying your own blueprint. It typically only takes 1 shot to get rid of a blueprint. If you use something like a rifle that has a way higher damage per shot, you're going to get restricted way faster. If you are needing to remove like a badly placed truck that's in your way, and you use a cutler or something, the damage is so extremely high that it's only going to take like a few shots before you get weapons restricted. So the other options that you have, are having friends with you to basically take the hits for you, and take like the team damage, like gauge filling up in the background, or you can carefully place one at a time, and it's going to be difficult for you guys to see because you can't see like me hovering over stuff, but I'll take you over here where there might be some free space left. You put down a blueprint, but you do not dig it out. You put the blueprint where you want the thing to be. So let's pretend like this is a rifle garrison, and you're like, okay, well this stone wall is something that I need to work with, but I want to angle it in just a certain way, that like I want it as close as possible, as close as I can get away with it. So you would put it like right there, but you wouldn't dig it out because you're not sure if at the end of it you're going to be able to fit all 3 pieces in. So you just hover your cursor in place where the next section is going to be, where it snaps naturally into. And as long as you don't do any kind of jerky mouse movement, the game will keep that next square position for you. So I'm not going to dig that out. I'm just going to leave that, and I'm going to let the game snap the square to the left. And I'm not moving my mouse. I'm just keeping it hovering. And as long as I can kind of guide it over to the right. Okay, I accidentally dug that one out, but just pretend I didn't. I'm gonna put this next one down. And I can see, just by the fact that it's still in yellow, that I'm good to go. I can build all the way through without it getting upset. So then I would dig this out. I would dig that out, and then I would just go down the line, because I know for a fact that it's going to connect up no matter what. That's the way that I would recommend working around the team damage issues, especially as you're still learning, is to just blueprint it out, which is a slightly annoying process, but not digging it out. And then if you can see that the defense will allow you to place it in all the areas that you want to end up in, then you dig the whole thing out the way that you originally envisioned. That's more of an experience thing. It's easier to visualize when you actually dig out the sections one at a time. You only need to dig something out once to get the blueprint to stay down. But when you get used to it, you'll understand what I mean, just kind of intuitively. So let's imagine that the core is right here. We've done a bow tie or whatever. We're having trenches extending off of it. At the ends of those trenches are these W designs facing all the cardinal directions that matter, and everything looks good. Only after you've completely blueprinted absolutely everything the way that you want should you dig it out. Do not dig out the entire thing until you are 100% satisfied with how the whole thing looks. The reason is because even though it doesn't look like it to our eyeballs, the game thinks that the terrain around a built-up thing has changed in some way. So you can help me dig this out, JJ, or T-Force. Well, I'll just dig this out completely. When we get this built up, it will very, very, very slightly raise the terrain around it, so that stuff that could fit neatly next to it before can't anymore. So it's kind of hard to see, but you can see raised edges all around the bunker piece. So stuff that you could get really uncomfortably close before by blueprinting, kind of like, for example, I'll show you over here. Like, this is going to seem insane, but you can get it really frickin' close. You can get stuff extremely close, like uncomfortably close to each other, and still dig them out, and the game will let you do it. The closest that I can get away with this other section is like right there. That's as close as it'll let me get it. And so it doesn't seem like a huge deal, but when you're working with limited space, you're trying to conserve supply consumption over a really long period of time. You're trying to pack as much defenses into an area as you can get away with while packing all the other amenities that you care about. Every square inch matters. So that also brings us to tier 2ing. Its stuff is at its most easy to deal with and reconfigure when it's tier 1. It is incredibly hard to reconfigure stuff or build stuff back up the way that it was when it's tier 2'd. That's because even if you were to destroy something and it leaves what's called a husk behind, which is like the destroyed rebuildable piece, the game still keeps its terrain edges. So if you get partisans, like if some green man comes out of the wilderness with a cutler and a dream and takes out like a whole W section here, and that's packed in tight with like other W sections, you won't be able to build the sections up exactly the way that it was before, because of that raised terrain. So you'll just have to adapt to the new way that it's built up. Or you can destroy the husks, which takes a huge amount of high explosive stuff. So if you're working with like an anti-satchel trench, like a trench line that goes all the way around to stop, bumfucks from running up with a satchel, suppressing the rifle garrison with like an MG or something and taking out a piece, You then have to work with whatever design you can get away with within that anti-satchel trench line. You just have to work with the space that you're given afterward, or you have to remove it all in order to build it up as close to the way that it was before. That's what I had to do at Tomb, where partisans destroyed a W section like this. There were 3 sections that were neatly packed together, and because they destroyed those 3 sections, because of the terrain differences from these stupid little raised edges, I could not build it up the pretty way that it was again. I had to make do with some number of sections because of OBSEC, some number of sections that would work with the new space that I was given. Engineering is as much about planning as it is about adaptability, especially if you are psychotic and you try to frontline build. Frontline building is one of the hardest, most stressful, most satisfying, and nerve-wracking things that you can bring on yourself. In which case, you can be pretty reliable. You can be sure that if you go to bed, you cannot be certain that your base is going to be there in the morning, or that people with good intentions randomly build shit like ramps and engine rooms and just tack it onto stuff. And the reason why I'm talking about engine rooms is because it lowers the integrity stuff that we were talking about before. The important thing to know if you bring it upon yourself to frontline build is to not panic. That's one. If you see crap go down around you, try your best not to let yourself get upset. It is important to think about building in general as if it were a Buddhist sand painting, where you put all of this effort and all this resources and all this care into it, and yet it could be wiped away in an instant. It should still absolutely be done because that's the only way that the front can be maintained. But it does. You need to put yourself ahead of time into the 7 stages of grief and try to segue yourself into the acceptance stage as soon as you can. The more often that you do that, the more comfortable you are with taking risks in general with your building and recovering more quickly from like a total base loss. I've had a few bases that I put a arguably unreasonable amount of effort into, that I wake up and like it's just like the artery pits that are left. That's that's just the way that it goes. So we've talked about like the defense sections and all that stuff. We talked about the garrison supplies, the location and everything, and then it comes down to how do you supply it? What do you give your base in order to give the people that are spawning from it the best chance to survive? There are some things that a base is going to need to be able to live, no matter what stage of the game it's in, late or early, it doesn't matter. People need guns, they need ammo, they need some form of AT, which in the very early game would probably be HE or stickies. They need meds of some kind, like bandages and trauma kits and all that fun stuff. They need supplies, like shirts, soldier supplies, and they need B mats. So the good baseline to go for especially a frontline base is like 300 guns, like 900 ammo for those guns, basically like 3 clips for those guns, enough AT, so maybe like 150 of whatever AT option is available to you to bring over, like 160 bandages, 160 like plasma to revive people with, 20 of each of the kits, about 300 shirts if you can get away with, and then at minimum 2,000 basic materials. You want to aim for 4,000 as much as you can get away with. That basically means that people can just do whatever they need to with the base for a long time. You also have to account for people that have no standards and run up to your base and like just pull like 1,500 B mats from it because it's the closest thing, for their own personal pet project. It's all stuff to account for. All right, so it looks like we covered a good amount of the basics without going overboard. I'll give the AI ranges now. So for this thing here, it's 150. AI 150 meters out on the map. Same with a town hall. The safe house is 100. The BB is 80, and the forward base is 80 also. If you are going to build your base deep in the butthole of the mountains, you you a recommendation is to build a bunker core, like the ones that we designed here, and then place a forward base, an encampment, somewhere near it. The reason why is because each base, even if completely unattended, like nobody goes near it, nobody supplies it, nobody spawns at it, nobody touches it for a long time, a base will generate tech towards itself just by its existing. So that type of base I just described is called a sleeper base, where you think you're building it at a choke point or some other important area, and you're just gonna leave it there, and let it tech through like all the way through like a small garrison, large garrison, as long as you don't build any kind of like modifications. So for example, to like 4 minimum modifications inside a bunker piece, in order to get it teching to like rifle garrison, or 8 to get it to like MG garrison and whatnot. You can force the bunker to path its technology upgrades by only giving it the bare minimum that it needs to get to those upgrades. So if you were to build a bunker core here, a bunker core here, and not modify its bunker pieces in any way, and just leave it, it will tech all the way through large garrison if given enough time, and if given like a bare minimum supply, like 1 crate of like bunker supplies in order to keep itself alive. That it like a good reference is like if you look at your map and go over to Lynn of Mercy, which is like on the it's what is on our right side. If you look at Holdfast, there's a bunker base there that I built that is literally just the core and some like modifications inside of it in order to get it to the required number in order to build up to machine gun. If you look at the map and you hover over a base and like the upgrades are in red, that means that it's teched that far. It also gives you a reasonably accurate breakdown of how far it's teching along the other stuff. And it's entirely within reason that you build a bunker core and then you just let it sit there and you check up on it every now and again to give it like 1 crate of supplies. And I'm talking like every once every 24 hours, like redeploying whatever area is closest, checking on it, making sure that it's surviving, and then going on your merry way. You could just keep doing that day after day until it gets large garrison. Then you build a section like this. It doesn't even need to be a defense section. It just needs to be bunker pieces. And you use a hammer, press F to upgrade. You have 50 B mats in your inventory, and you modify it to have like a beds or lockers that's just aesthetic. There's no difference between the two. And you put 4 of those lockers in the bunker pieces, and can make sure that the whole thing is connected up with a trench to your bunker core. The game will then realize, oh hey, I need to I still have tech points to give, but I can only put it into rifle garrison. So you add 4 more pieces after it's tech that or before, and let it tech all the way to machine gun. You add another 4, that's your AT, and you can kind of see how it kind of pans out like that. I think that touches all the points. It does not, unfortunately, cover everything, but I am running out of voice to give. So if needed, I can set up another one in the future to go over the more detailed stuff, like what a base should actually look like blueprinting it all out. But I'm gonna stop the recording here.